You wake up. The alarm clock rings at the same time every day. You turn it off, get up, shower, and have breakfast. You put on the same clothes or an almost identical version of the day before. You grab your phone, check notifications that change nothing. You leave the house. You get in the car, on the subway, on the bus. You arrive at work. You do your tasks. You wait for quitting time. You go home. You eat, you watch something, you sleep. And the next day, it all starts over. Nothing is wrong. Technically, everything is working. You have commitments, responsibilities, even some pleasures scattered throughout your routine. But there is something, a feeling that has no name, as if underneath it all there is a weight, an emptiness that no achievement can fill, a tiredness that does not go away with rest. And the strangest thing, you can't pinpoint where the problem lies. There is a moment, usually when you're alone, when this feeling appears clearly. It may be in the car stuck in traffic. It may be at night before going to sleep. It may be in the middle of a meeting when you realize you are talking, but you don't feel anything you say. At that moment, a silent question arises. Is that all there is? It's not depression. It's not sadness. It's something deeper. It's the feeling that your whole life is a script you didn't write but are forced to follow. And no matter how much you fulfill each step, studying, working, achieving, building, the emptiness remains. As if there were a structural error, as if something fundamental were missing. But no one could say what. Arthur Schopenhauer, a 19th century German philosopher, saw this with brutal clarity. He didn't try to comfort. He didn't offer optimistic solutions. He simply said, life is suffering, and not as a metaphor, not as poetic exaggeration, but as an accurate diagnosis of the human condition. For Schopenhauer, suffering is not an accident. It is not the result of bad luck, wrong choices, or individual failure. It is the structure of existence. Life was not made to fulfill us. It was made to keep us moving, desiring, seeking, conquering, and then desiring again. A cycle that never ends, a thirst that is never quenched. He described it as a pendulum. On one side, the suffering of lack. On the other, the boredom of conquest. And in the middle, nothing. Just the eternal oscillation between pain and emptiness. Have you ever noticed this? How many times have you wanted something intensely? A job, a relationship, an object, recognition? And when you finally got it, the happiness lasted for hours? Days, if you're lucky. And then the emptiness returned. And it came accompanied by a new desire. Something bigger, something different. As if the mind refused, on principle, the possibility of being satisfied. Schopenhauer called this will. A blind force that moves all existence. Not a conscious choice. Not something you control. But a drive. An impulse that is in you. In animals, in plants, in everything that lives. Will wants one thing, to continue, to perpetuate itself. And for that, it uses an old trick, desire. It makes you believe that if you get that person, that job, that goal, you will finally be complete. And you pursue it, you fight for it, you conquer it. And when you get there, you realize that it wasn't that. It was something else. And the search begins again. This is not your fault, it's the system. Life was not designed for you to be happy. It was designed for you to keep wanting. And as long as you want, you suffer, because wanting, by definition, is missing. It is recognizing that something is absent, and absence hurts. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that if by some miracle you achieved everything, money, love, recognition, health, beauty, you would not find peace. You would find boredom, that deep emptiness of someone who has nothing left to pursue. And boredom, Schopenhauer said, can be even more unbearable than suffering. Because at least in suffering there is movement. There is something to be resolved. In boredom, all that remains is the naked awareness that none of this matters. Look around. You see people who have everything and yet seem empty. Celebrities who achieved fame, wealth, admiration, and killed themselves. Billionaire entrepreneurs who work 16 hours a day as if they were running away from something. Couples who loved each other intensely and now live in silence, going through the motions. It's not that these people failed. It's that they discovered something that most people still avoid seeing. There is no destination. The promise that one day you will be fulfilled is a lie, not because you are incapable, but because fulfillment in the sense of permanent satisfaction does not exist. What exists is an endless sequence of temporarily satisfied desires. And between one and the other, emptiness. Schopenhauer saw this, and he didn't try to sugarcoat it. He simply said, this is life. You will desire, you will conquer, you will be disappointed, you will desire again, and in the end, it all ends the same way. You die, and nothing you have accumulated, experiences, achievements, loves, goes with you. This sounds like nihilism. It sounds like exaggerated pessimism, but it's a description, and maybe deep down you already know this. Maybe you've already felt it. That feeling of being stuck in a game whose rules you didn't choose, but which you are forced to play. And maybe the question isn't how do we escape, but rather why do we keep playing? The answer lies in desire, but not in the romantic, motivational sense of the force that moves mountains. No, desire here is something else. It is the engine that keeps you trapped. It is the invisible chain. It is what, from the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep, whispers to you, you need more. Schopenhauer understood this with surgical precision. For him, desire is not something you choose to feel. It is something that possesses you, a force that precedes reason, that precedes consciousness. You don't decide to want, you simply want. And that wanting never stops. Think about how it works. You feel hungry. Hunger is uncomfortable. It is an absence that hurts. So you eat. And for a few minutes, there is relief, satisfaction. But soon the hunger returns, and the cycle begins again. This is obvious with biological needs, but it happens with everything. You want a better job. You spend months, maybe years chasing that position. Finally, you get it. In the early days, there is euphoria. You feel it was worth it. But after a few weeks, it becomes routine. And what was once an achievement is now just the new normal. And another desire arises. A higher position, a bigger salary, recognition that has not yet come. You want a relationship. You spend months alone, missing someone, until you meet someone. There is passion, intensity, novelty. But over time, the intensity diminishes. The novelty fades, and you begin to notice flaws, incompatibilities, silences. What once completed you now irritates you. And you ask yourself, was this what I wanted? Schopenhauer said that to want in itself is essentially to suffer, because to want is to recognize a lack. It is to admit that something is missing. And while it is missing, you suffer. You live in tension, body and mind focused on what you don't have. It's like a constant itch. You can't relax until you scratch it. But when you scratch it, the relief is brief. Soon the itch returns, or it appears somewhere else. And worst of all, when you finally get what you wanted, the pleasure doesn't last. Not because you don't deserve it, not because you chose wrong, but because pleasure, by definition, is the temporary absence of pain. It's not a state, it's an interval, a brief rest between one suffering and another. Think about thirst. You don't feel pleasure because you're not thirsty. You only feel pleasure when the thirst disappears after it has existed. Pleasure depends on previous pain. Without pain, there is no pleasure, only neutrality. And neutrality, for the human mind, is unbearable. That's why you're never satisfied. It's not a lack of gratitude. It's not excessive ambition. It's design. The mind was built not to be satisfied, because satisfaction means stopping. And stopping in the logic of survival means dying. So the mind keeps you moving, it keeps you wanting. And you interpret this as the pursuit of happiness. But in fact, it's just an escape from the pain of not having. Look at your own life. How many times have you said, when I get this, I'll be happy? And you got it, and you weren't. At least not for long. The happiness you imagined would last forever lasted days, maybe hours. And soon you were back to square one, wanting something else, pursuing another goal. This is not unique to you. It is universal. Look at the people around you. Those who haven't achieved what you have envy you. They think your life is better, that you have something they don't. And maybe you do. But that didn't make you happier. It just put you on another level of the same game. Now you want different things, more refined, more difficult to achieve. But the structure is the same. Desire, pursuit, achievement, emptiness, new desire. Schopenhauer compared this to a dog chasing its own tail. The dog spins, runs, almost catches it, but never catches it. And even if it does, what happens? It bites the tip, feels pain, and lets go. And the cycle begins again. The difference is that the dog is not aware of this. It does not ask itself why it is running. It just runs. You are aware, and that makes everything worse. Because you see the cycle. You realize that you have lived this before, that you have wanted, achieved, and been disappointed, and yet you continue. Not because you choose to, but because you don't know how to do anything else. Because stopping desiring seems impossible. It seems like death in life. But what is life if not this? This eternal race after something that, when achieved, ceases to matter. There is a thought experiment that Schopenhauer liked to propose. Imagine that by some miracle, you could fulfill all your desires at once. Everything you want, you have. Unlimited money, perfect health, beauty, intelligence, unconditional love, universal recognition, everything. What would happen? In the early days, euphoria. You would enjoy it. You would experience it. But soon you would realize something disturbing. There is nothing left to do. There are no more goals. There are no more challenges. You would have everything, but you would have no purpose. And without purpose, what is left? Boredom. A deep boredom, existential. Because you would discover that the joy was never in having. The joy was in wanting. It was in the pursuit. It was in the tension. And now that there is nothing left to pursue, only emptiness remains. Schopenhauer said that human life oscillates between two equally miserable states, the suffering of lack and the boredom of conquest. There is no middle ground. Either you suffer because you don't have, or you are bored because you do. And in the end, neither is bearable. Look at those who have everything. Celebrities, billionaires, people who have reached the top of their fields. How many of them seem truly happy? How many are addicted to work, drugs, or anything else that keeps them busy, away from themselves? Robin Williams had fame, money, talent. He made millions of people laugh, and he hanged himself. Anthony Bourdain traveled the world, tasting the best dishes, living experiences that most will never have, and he killed himself. Avicii, Kurt Cobain, Amy Winehouse. The list is long, and the pattern is the same. It's not that these people were weak or ungrateful. It's that they reached the top of the mountain and realized there was nothing there, that the promise was empty. That desire kept them alive, and when desire ran out, all that was left was emptiness. Schopenhauer would not be surprised. For him, this is inevitable. This is the structure of life. You are driven by a force, the will, that does not care about you, that does not want your happiness, that only wants to perpetuate itself, and it uses you as a tool. It makes you desire so that you continue, so that you reproduce, so that you pass on this same curse. And the cruelest part? You know this. You've lived this cycle dozens of times. You've wanted it, you've achieved it, you've been disappointed, and yet you still want it. Because the alternative, not wanting it, seems impossible. It seems like renunciation. It seems like giving up. But perhaps the real question is another. What if the problem is not how to fulfill my desires, but rather why do I have desires? What if the prison is not outside but inside? What if the only way to escape is to stop wanting? Schopenhauer thought so, but he also knew that this is almost impossible. Because as long as you are alive, the will push you. It will make you want, and you will suffer. Not because you chose to, but because you were born, and yet you continue, desiring, seeking, getting frustrated, as if there were some reward at the end, as if this time it would be different, but it never is. Now comes the hardest part to accept. It's not just that life is made up of desire and frustration. That would be cruel enough. The worst part is that there is no purpose to it, no hidden meaning, no cosmic reward waiting for you at the end. Nature doesn't care. It doesn't care about you, about what you feel, about what you dream, about what you suffer. Nature is blind, indifferent, and it follows its own rules without any consideration for what that causes. Schopenhauer was one of the first philosophers to say this out loud, without euphemisms. Nature, he wrote, is always true and never moral. It doesn't reward the good. It doesn't punish the bad. It has no sense of justice. It just works, like a machine. And in that machine, you are a part, replaceable, disposable. Think about how we learn to see nature. Since childhood, you have been taught to admire it. The majestic mountains, the endless sea, the starry sky, the sunset, everything seems harmonious, beautiful, almost divine. But this is a filtered view, romanticized, safe. True nature is not a postcard. True nature is a newborn turtle running towards the sea, being devoured by seagulls before it touches the water. It is a gazelle fawn being torn apart by lions while it is still breathing. It is an insect being slowly parasitized from the inside out by larvae that eat its vital organs until only the shell remains. Nature is not beautiful. It is brutal. And what does it want? Nothing. It wants nothing. It has no conscious will. It has no plan. It just continues. Life generating life. Death feeding life. An eternal cycle where every living being exists to serve as food or a tool for another. And in the midst of it all, suffering. A lot of suffering. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. For him, the world is a great spectacle of horror. Every creature struggles to survive at the expense of another. And there is no escape. There are no innocents. Everyone is involved in this game of devouring and being devoured. And nature watches, if it watches at all, with total indifference. There is no justice there. There is no moral balance. There is only survival. The strongest crushes the weakest. The fastest escapes. The slowest dies. And none of them deserve the fate they had. It just happened. This applies to animals. But it also applies to humans. Why are children born with terminal illnesses? Why do some people live for decades in chronic pain? Why do earthquakes, tsunamis, and pandemics kill indiscriminately, sparing no innocents? The answer is simple. Because nature doesn't care. It is not paying attention. There is no one in control deciding who deserves to suffer and who deserves to be spared. This is difficult to accept because we have always been taught to believe that there is some meaning, that things happen for a reason, that suffering in some way serves a purpose, teaches something, transforms something. But Schopenhauer didn't buy that story. For him, suffering has no purpose. It doesn't teach, it doesn't purify. It just exists as an inevitable consequence of being alive. And trying to find meaning in it is just another form of self-deception, a desperate attempt to make the unbearable minimally tolerable. Look at human history. War after war, genocide after genocide, diseases that wiped out entire populations, slavery, hunger, misery. And at no point did nature intervene. At no point did a higher power appear to say enough. This is too much. Why? Because there is no higher power. Or if there is, it doesn't care. Schopenhauer went further. He said if there is a God who created this world, then he is cruel or incompetent. Because no benevolent, omnipotent, and wise being would create a system where suffering is the rule and happiness is the exception, where children die of hunger, where animals are devoured alive, where pain is omnipresent and inevitable. If God made this world, he wrote, I would not want to be that God. The misery of the world would break my heart. But the world did not break any heart, because there is no heart. There is no cosmic compassion. There is no watchful eye over you. You are alone, and nature will run its course with or without you. And there's more. Nature is not only indifferent, it is cruel by design. Pain exists for an evolutionary reason. Without pain, you would not flee from danger. Without hunger, you would not seek food. Without fear, you would not protect yourself. Pain is the mechanism that keeps you alive, but not because life is worth living, just because life wants to continue, at any cost. Nature doesn't care if you're happy. It only cares if you survive long enough to reproduce. After that, you're disposable. The body ages, the mind fails, and you die. And nature goes on, generating new beings, new lives, new forms of suffering. Think of all the diseases that exist: cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, ALS, diseases that destroy slowly, mercilessly, senselessly. Why do they exist? Because nature was not designed to avoid suffering. It was designed to perpetuate life. And if life generates suffering, so be it. Stephen Hawking lived for decades trapped in a body that did not respond. He had a brilliant mind. He contributed immensely to science. And yet he was condemned to watch his body decay while his consciousness remained intact. Where is the justice in that? Where is the compassion? There is none. And Schopenhauer would say, there never was. Look at the animal kingdom. Every species lives under constant threat. Predators hunt, prey flee. Thousands of young animals die before reaching maturity. And those who survive, they live in constant tension, hunger, thirst, fear, disease, until eventually they are killed by another animal, by lack of resources, by old age. And humans, we are no different. We just have the added curse of knowing it's going to happen, of anticipating it, of fearing it, of spending our entire lives knowing that the end is coming and that there's nothing we can do about it. Death is not an exception, it is the rule, and it comes to everyone. Rich, poor, righteous, unrighteous, children, the elderly. Nature does not discriminate. It does not spare. It does not negotiate. Schopenhauer summed it up this way: life is a loan that is charged with absurd interest. You didn't ask to be born, but you were born, and now you're here, trapped in a body that feels hunger, pain, fear, trapped in a mind that desires, frustrates, suffers. And all this for what? So that life can continue. Not your life, the process. The blind mechanism that perpetuates itself through you, regardless of whether you are happy or miserable. And when you die, nature will continue. Others will be born, others will suffer, others will die, and the cycle will continue. Indifferent, eternal, purposeless. This is not pessimism, it is observation. It is looking at the world as it is, not as we would like it to be. And what do we see? Widespread suffering, structural pain, and no reward on the horizon. But then how do people go on? How do billions of human beings wake up every day, face this brutal reality, and still carry on? How do we bear to live in a universe that doesn't care? The answer is as simple as it is devastating: by lying to ourselves. The naked truth is unbearable. If everyone saw reality as it is, a blind cycle of suffering, desire, and death, without purpose, without reward, without meaning, few would continue living. Most would collapse. They would stop. They would give up. But that doesn't happen. Billions of people wake up every day. They go to work, they make plans, they fall in love, they build dreams, they carry on. How? by lying to themselves, not consciously, not as deliberate fraud, but as a survival mechanism. The human mind has developed filters, narratives, comforting stories that hide the emptiness. And these stories are so convincing, so well constructed, that most people go through their entire lives without realizing they are living within an illusion. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. For him, these illusions are not accidental. They are necessary, because without them, humanity would not survive. The truth would kill. So we create lies, and we cling to them like shipwrecked people to debris. The first and oldest of these lies is religion. Since the dawn of civilization, human beings have been unable to accept that suffering is empty, that pain has no purpose, that death is the end. So we invented another story, a story where there is a God, where there is a plan, where suffering has meaning, where there is justice. Religion promises that none of this is in vain, that every tear will be rewarded, that every injustice will be redressed, that after death there is something better, heaven, paradise, reincarnation, anything that makes the idea of spending decades suffering in this world bearable. And it works. For most people, religion is the ultimate painkiller. It's what allows them to move on. It's what transforms meaningless pain into divine trial. It transforms loss into God's will. It transforms injustice into sacred mystery. But Schopenhauer didn't buy into this narrative. For him, religion is an illusion. Necessary perhaps, but an illusion. Because if we look at the real world, diseases that kill children, disasters that destroy families, wars that annihilate millions, it becomes impossible to reconcile this with the idea of a just, omnipotent, and compassionate God. Either God does not exist, or he does not care, or he is cruel. There is no fourth option. But most people cannot accept this, because accepting this would be accepting emptiness. It would be admitting that no one is in control, that there is no safety net, that you are alone in an indifferent universe, and that is too terrifying. So people choose to believe, not because there is evidence, but because the alternative is unbearable. When religion begins to fail, when education, science, reason begin to expose the cracks, modern society offers another lie, another narrative, another form of illusion: progress. In recent centuries, humanity has replaced God with another promise, the promise that we are evolving, that we are building something, that life has meaning because we can leave a legacy, improve the world, move forward, work, study, achieve, grow, produce, leave your mark. This is the new religion, and it is as convincing as the old one, because it offers the same comfort, the idea that your life is not empty, that you are contributing to something greater, that your suffering has purpose. But Schopenhauer saw progress as yet another illusion, because what is progress after all? We have created technologies that prolong life, and the result? More years suffering from chronic diseases, more decades in nursing homes alone waiting for death. Medical progress has not eliminated suffering. It has only extended its duration. We have created economic systems that increase productivity. And the result? More people working to exhaustion, more burnout, more anxiety, more depression. Economic progress has not brought happiness, only new types of misery. We have created social networks that connect the world. And the result? Mass loneliness, constant comparison, envy, emptiness. Technological progress has not brought people closer together. It has only created new forms of isolation. And in the end, what does all this progress change? You will still die. You will still lose those you love. You will still grow old. You will still suffer. Progress does not solve the fundamental problem of existence. It just distracts you from it. But distraction works. While you are busy working, building, pursuing goals, you don't have time to stop and think. And that's exactly what the system wants. Because if you stop, if you really look at your life, you may realize that you're just going through the motions, that you're trading time, the only truly finite resource you have, for money, and then trading money for objects that don't fill the void. But you don't stop, because stopping hurts, because stopping means confronting the truth. So you keep going, busy, productive, distracted. And when work isn't enough, when progress isn't convincing, there's yet another great illusion, the greatest of all, love. We've always been taught that love is the meaning of life, that finding the right person will fill the void, that loving and being loved is what matters, that love conquers all. But Schopenhauer saw love differently. For him, love is not something divine. It is not transcendent. It is biological. It is evolutionary. It is a trick of nature. You feel attraction, passion, desire, and you interpret it as something special, unique, magical. But what is really happening? Your body is pushing you to reproduce. Nature is using you as a tool to perpetuate the species. And it does this ingeniously. It makes you feel that you have chosen, that you love, that it has meaning. But does it? Observe what happens to love over time. In the beginning, there is intensity, euphoria. The other person seems perfect. You feel like you finally found someone who completes you, who understands you, who fills the void. But over time, the intensity diminishes. The euphoria passes, and you start to see flaws, incompatibilities, awkward silences. What once completed you now irritates you. What once enchanted you now tires you. So what then? Then you have three options. First, end it, find someone else and start the cycle over. Second, stay and accept that love has turned into routine, into companionship, into convenience. Third, stay and suffer, stuck in something that no longer satisfies you but that seems impossible to abandon. None of these options solves the problem, because the problem isn't the person, it's the promise. The promise that love brings permanent happiness, and that promise is false. Schopenhauer said that love is the most refined form of suffering, because if your love is unrequited, you suffer from rejection. If your love is reciprocated, you suffer from the fear of loss. If you conquer, you suffer from routine. If you lose, you suffer from absence. There is no way out. Love, like everything else in life, is just another form of desire. And desire, as we have already seen, is suffering. But people keep searching. They keep believing, because the alternative, accepting that not even love fills the void, is too devastating. And here's the crucial point. All these illusions, religion, progress, love, are not mistakes. They are strategies. They are ways that humanity has found to endure the unbearable, to live knowing that life has no meaning, but pretending that it does. Modern science confirms this. Neuroscience studies show that the human brain has specific mechanisms for distorting reality, for creating hope where there is none, for generating meaning where there is none. Dopamine keeps you pursuing goals. Serotonin makes you accept the unacceptable. Oxytocin makes you attach yourself to people, even though you know everything is temporary. Your brain literally deceives you, not because it is flawed, but because it is efficient, because deception is survival, and survival is all that matters to nature. Schopenhauer summed it up this way: man can do what he wants, but he cannot want what he wants. You don't choose your desires. You don't choose your illusions. You don't choose to believe. You simply believe, because believing is less painful than seeing. And as long as you believe, you continue to live, working, loving, building, without realizing that you are just following a script, without realizing that you are a prisoner of narratives you did not write. But there are moments, rare moments, when illusions fail, when masks fall, when you see, even if only for a few seconds, reality without filters. And in those moments, what happens? There is a moment in life when everything stops, not externally. The world keeps turning, people keep talking, traffic keeps flowing, but something inside you just freezes. It's hard to describe. It's not sadness. It's not despair. It's something else. It's as if suddenly you were seeing everything from the outside, as if you were a spectator of your own life, and you realize with brutal clarity that none of it matters. It can happen anywhere. In the middle of a work meeting, when you realize you're saying empty words about empty goals. In bed late at night when the silence becomes too heavy and you can no longer ignore your own thoughts. At the funeral of someone close to you when you understand that it will happen to you, to everyone. At that moment, illusions stop working. Religion no longer comforts you, because you look up at the sky and see no one looking back. Progress no longer excites you, because you realize you're running on a treadmill, moving forward without leaving your place. Love no longer fulfills you, because you feel deeply that not even the closest person can reach the emptiness inside you. And what remains? Emptiness. Pure, raw, inevitable. Schopenhauer called this the awakening of the tragic spirit, the moment when consciousness recognizes that there is no meaning, that all struggles have been futile, that happiness is just an interval between sufferings, and that life in the end is a bad play whose last act is always the same: death. Some people experience this awakening in childhood, children who look at their parents and suddenly understand that they will die, that everything will end, and they carry this weight silently without knowing how to name what they feel. Other people experience this in their youth, at the height of their vitality, when they should be full of hope, but feel only emptiness, as if something fundamental were missing, as if everyone around them is following a script they can't believe. And there are those who experience this after achieving everything, after reaching the top of their career, after building a family, after accumulating wealth, and they realize too late that none of it brought what it promised, that the emptiness remains, greater than ever. That's when many people break down. Because it's one thing to live without meaning when you don't realize it, when the illusions work, when you're too busy to think. It's quite another to live without meaning and know it, knowing that nothing will change, that there is no way out, that you will die without understanding why you lived. The suicide rate increases, especially among those who theoretically have everything: celebrities, business people, successful people. Why? Because they reached what society said was the final destination, and they discovered that there was nothing there, no reward, no lasting satisfaction, just more emptiness. Ernest Hemingway, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century, killed himself. Virginia Woolf filled her pockets with stones and walked into the river. Kurt Gödel, one of the most brilliant logicians in history, stopped eating until he starved to death. They all had something in common. They saw the truth, and the truth destroyed them. Because the truth is this: you will die, and everything you have built will disappear. Your dreams, your achievements, your memories, everything will be forgotten, and the universe will go on indifferent, as if you had never existed. There is no escaping it. No distraction is big enough. No work is intense enough. No relationship is deep enough. Death is there, waiting, inevitable, and before it, aging, deterioration, loss. Schopenhauer knew this, and he didn't try to sugarcoat it. He said, "Life is a loan that is charged with absurd interest. You didn't ask to be born, but you were, and now you have to pay the price. You have to feel hunger, thirst, pain, fear. You have to desire things that don't satisfy you. You have to love people you will lose. You have to build things that will be destroyed. You have to grow old, get sick, die. And why? For nothing. Simply because that's how life works. Look at history. Entire empires rose and fell. Millions of people lived, fought, suffered, died. And what remains? Ruins. Books that no one reads. Names that no one remembers. Time devours everything. And in the end, it's as if nothing ever happened. Alexander the Great conquered half the known world, and he died at age 33, probably poisoned. Napoleon commanded armies, changed Europe, and he ended up exiled, sick, alone, on a remote island. Caesar was assassinated by those he trusted. Kings and emperors accumulated immense wealth, and today their riches are in museums, being looked at by bored tourists. Nothing lasted. Nothing mattered. Life always has the last laugh. And today? Today is no different. People spend decades studying for careers they hate. They work themselves to exhaustion to buy houses they barely live in. They build families that will one day disperse. And all for what? To reach 70, 80 years of age and realize that life has passed them by. That time has been wasted. That nothing they did had the impact they imagined. This is the truth that most people avoid. But when you wake up to it, there is no going back to sleep. And if you've come this far in this video, in this reflection, it's because you've already felt it. You've already had that moment. Maybe you're still in it, and you're searching. Not for a solution, because there are no easy solutions, but for understanding, clarity, someone to say out loud what you feel in silence. This channel exists for that. Do not run away from the truth. Do not sell cheap comfort. If you want to continue exploring these issues, subscribe. Turn on notifications. Because the answers you'll find here won't make you happy, but they will make you lucid. And lucidity, in the end, is the only dignity that remains. Most people can't stand this lucidity. When they realize that life is empty, they run back to their illusions. Religion, work, relationships, anything that distracts them from the truth. And there are those who simply give up, who decide that if life has no meaning, it is not worth continuing. And no one can judge them, because who can say they are wrong? Who can guarantee that fighting the inevitable is better than accepting the end? Schopenhauer understood this temptation, but he also knew that suicide does not solve the problem, because the problem is not individual life, it is existence itself. It is the structure of reality. Killing yourself does not destroy the will, it only eliminates one of its manifestations. And the will continues, creating new beings, new sufferings, new voids. So if religion is an illusion, if progress is a distraction, if love is a biological trick, and if suicide solves nothing, what remains? What remains is to understand. What remains is to see. What remains is to wake up completely. And then maybe there is a different way to live. Not happy, but conscious. Not fulfilled, but lucid. But before that, we need to go deeper. We need to understand not only that life is suffering, but why this is inevitable. Why we are biologically programmed to never be satisfied. Why consciousness is a curse. Why modern science confirms everything Schopenhauer intuited almost 2 centuries ago. Schopenhauer did not have access to laboratories. He did not have MRIs. He did not know neuroscience, evolutionary psychology, or genetics, but he intuited something that modern science would only confirm more than a century later. Human beings were not designed to be happy. They were designed to survive. And survival, by definition, is suffering. Your brain is not your ally. It is not working to make you happy. It is working to keep you alive. And to do that, it uses brutal tools: fear, pain, anxiety, insatiable desire. All these things that make you suffer are not bugs. They are resources. They are exactly what should be happening. Let's start with the reward system, dopamine. Most people think dopamine is the neurotransmitter of pleasure, that when you achieve something, your brain releases dopamine and you feel good. But that's not how it works. Dopamine is released in anticipation, not in achievement. When you're pursuing something, a goal, a person, an experience, your brain releases dopamine, and that makes you feel motivated, energized, hopeful. But when you finally get what you wanted, the dopamine drops drastically. And how do you feel? Empty. This explains why anticipation is always better than fulfillment, why planning a vacation is more enjoyable than the vacation itself, why imagining the ideal relationship is more intense than living the real relationship, why getting a promotion is exciting, but after a few days you're already thinking about the next one. Your brain deceives you. It makes you believe that this time will be different, that this time when you get it, you'll finally be satisfied. But you never are, because the system wasn't designed for satisfaction. It was designed for eternal pursuit. And this isn't unique to humans. When lab rats have access to a button that releases dopamine directly into their brains, they press the button until they die of exhaustion and hunger. They prefer the artificial pleasure of anticipation to food, water, and rest. And us? We do the same. With social media, with shopping, with pornography, with anything that gives us that quick dopamine rush, knowing it won't satisfy us, but unable to stop. Now let's move on to negativity bias. Your brain has been programmed to focus on the negative. Evolutionarily, this made sense. Our ancestors who ignored danger died. So those who survived were those who were always alert, always worried, always assuming the worst. Today, that mechanism is still active, but we live in a different world. There are no predators around the corner. There are no rival tribes invading. And yet your brain treats every unanswered email, every strange look, every ambiguous comment as if it were a death threat. Studies show that negative experiences have 5 times more impact than positive experiences. An insult hurts more than a compliment comforts. A financial loss affects more than an equivalent gain. One criticism marks more than 10 compliments. You're not being pessimistic, you're being human. Your brain literally cannot process the world in a balanced way. It distorts, it exaggerates, it amplifies the negative and minimizes the positive. And you go through life thinking that you are the problem, when in fact the problem is the design. Then there is hedonic adaptation, the phenomenon that psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. You adapt to everything. Quickly, you get a raise. In the early days, there is euphoria. Then the new salary becomes the norm. And you already want more. You buy a new car. For a few weeks, you feel proud. Then it's just the car you used to get to work. You meet someone. The initial passion is intense. Then it becomes routine. Your brain has a set point. And no matter what happens, achievement, loss, change, it always returns to that point. Studies of lottery winners show that a year later they are no happier than they were before. And studies of people who have suffered serious accidents show that over time they return to their previous level of happiness. This means you are stuck. No matter what you achieve, it will not make a permanent difference. You will adapt, and you will return to the same level of unhappiness as always. And the icing on the cake? Consciousness. Schopenhauer said that self-awareness is the greatest human curse. And neuroscience confirms this. Animals live in the present. They feel pain when it happens. Then they forget. Humans relive the pain countless times. They dwell on the past. They anticipate the future. They suffer twice, when it happens and when they imagine it will happen. You have an important meeting in a week, and you spend the whole week anxious, imagining scenarios, predicting failures. And when the meeting finally happens, it's often not as bad as you imagined, but your brain has already made you suffer for 7 days. This is uniquely human. And it's torture, because you can't turn it off. You can't stop thinking. Your mind is constantly ruminating, replaying mistakes, anticipating problems, creating suffering where it doesn't even exist yet. And there's more. Your brain has a region called the default mode network. When you're not focused on anything specific, this network activates. And what does it do? It wanders. It thinks about the past. It thinks about the future. It compares. It judges. It criticizes. Studies show that when this network is active, that is when you are doing nothing, you are less happy. Because your mind automatically goes to dark places, to worries, to regrets, to fears. That's why meditation, exercise, and focused work help. Not because they solve the problem, but because they temporarily shut down this network. They take you out of your own head. But as soon as you stop, it comes back, and the suffering begins again. And in the end, there is death. The only certainty. Your brain knows this, and it reminds you, constantly, through existential anxiety, through insomnia, through nighttime crises where you stare at the ceiling and think, one day I will no longer exist, and there is no escape. Neurodegenerative diseases ensure that if you live long enough, your own brain, this machine that has tortured you your entire life, will begin to fail. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. You will lose your memories, skills, identity. The mind you value so much is just flesh, with an expiration date. Schopenhauer was right. Life is structural suffering, and modern science offers no way out, only confirmation. Data, graphs, studies that say in technical language what he already knew. You were made to suffer, and there is no cure, only awareness. So here we are, at the bottom of the philosophical pit, at the point where all illusions have been shattered, where every attempt to find meaning has been exposed as self-deception, where science has confirmed what philosophy already intuited. You are trapped in a system of suffering with no apparent way out. Now what? Most philosophers, when they reach this point, try to offer a way out, a solution, a path. Nietzsche said, create your own meaning. Be the Superman who transcends nihilism. Camus said, embrace the absurd. Live despite the lack of meaning, like Sisyphus pushing the rock eternally, but smiling. Schopenhauer offered none of this. He didn't try to sugarcoat the pill. He didn't try to turn despair into motivation. He simply said, if the problem is desire, the only way out is to stop desiring. And that, he knew, is almost impossible. But let's take it easy, because that answer, stop desiring, is not simple. It's not self-help. It's not be grateful for what you have or practice mindfulness. It's something much more radical, much more difficult, and perhaps unattainable for most. Schopenhauer proposed 3 paths, not as a definitive solution, but as temporary ways to alleviate the burden of existence. The first path is art, aesthetic contemplation. When you are immersed in a work of art, a song, a painting, a book, a movie, something happens. For a few moments you forget yourself. You forget your problems, your desires, your worries. You are simply there, observing, feeling, wanting nothing. Schopenhauer called this suspension of the will. For brief moments, the blind force that drives you forward, that makes you desire, seek, suffer, is silenced. And you experience something rare, peace. Not happiness, not euphoria, but the absence of pain, the absence of longing. That's why people seek art, not just for entertainment, but for relief, for a moment of respite, for a few minutes where life doesn't weigh so heavily. But this path has a problem. It's temporary. The music ends, the movie ends, the book closes, and you return to your life, to your desires, to your suffering. Art doesn't solve it, it only postpones it. The second path is compassion. When you see the suffering of others, really see it, not just recognize it intellectually. Something changes. You realize that you're not alone, that everyone around you is stuck in the same game. Everyone desires, everyone suffers, everyone will die. And in this recognition, there is a temporary dissolution of the ego. You cease to be the center of the universe. You stop seeing your pain as unique and special. And you realize we are all victims of the same structure, of the same blind will that uses us as instruments. Schopenhauer saw compassion as the only truly moral emotion, because it does not arise from external rules, social obligation, or rational calculation. It arises from the direct recognition that the other is you, that their suffering is yours, that there is no real separation between you and the world. But again, compassion does not eliminate suffering. It only distributes it. It transforms individual pain into collective pain. And while this may bring some comfort, I am not alone in this. It does not change the fundamental structure. Suffering continues. For you, for the other, for everyone. The third path, the most radical, is asceticism, the denial of will. Here, Schopenhauer approaches Eastern traditions, Buddhism, Hinduism, the idea of renunciation, of detachment, of living with as little as possible, not for moral virtue, but as a strategy for psychological survival. If desire is the root of suffering, then the logical solution is to reduce desire to the lowest possible level, not wanting, not seeking, not expecting, living like a monk, solitary, contemplative, far from the traps of the world. Schopenhauer admired ascetics, hermits, those who abandoned everything, family, wealth, status, pleasure, to live in silence. because they understood something profound. The less you want, the less you suffer. But he also knew that this is extremely difficult, because the will does not give up easily. Even when you renounce obvious desires, money, sex, recognition, it finds subtle ways to return. You begin to desire peace, to desire enlightenment, to desire not to desire, and you're back in the cycle. True denial of the will, Schopenhauer said, is almost impossible, because as long as you're alive, the will is in you, pulsing, pushing, demanding. The only complete denial is death. And even then, individual death solves nothing, because the will continues, in other bodies, in other lives, in other forms of suffering. So in the end, what is Schopenhauer saying? He is saying, there is no real escape, there is no permanent solution, there is no happy ending. You can seek temporary relief through art, compassion, renunciation, but suffering is structural. It is embedded in the very nature of existence, and as long as you exist, it will be there. Is that nihilism? Yes. But it is honest nihilism. No false hopes, no empty promises. Schopenhauer is not trying to sell you anything. He's not saying do this and you'll be happy. He's just describing reality. And the reality is this: life is suffering, and there is no cure. But, and here's something subtle, something that many miss, recognizing this is not necessarily despair. It can be liberation, of a different kind. Because when you accept that there is no solution, you stop looking for one. You stop blaming yourself. You stop thinking that you are the problem. You stop believing that if you do everything right, if you achieve everything, if you are good enough, you will finally be complete. You won't. And that's okay. Or at least it's inevitable. Schopenhauer is not inviting you to give up on life. He is inviting you to give up on the illusion. To stop chasing happiness as if it were an attainable destination. To stop treating suffering as an anomaly, as something that needs to be fixed. Suffering doesn't need to be fixed, because it's not broken. That's how it works. And maybe, just maybe, when you fully accept that, something will change. Not in the outside world, not in the structure of existence, but in your relationship with it. You continue to live, you continue to do things. You continue to interact with the world, but without the expectation that it will save you. Without the illusion that someday you will get there, because there is no there. There never was. There is only this, the present moment, with all its weight, with all its emptiness, with all its suffering, and also occasionally with small moments of beauty, of connection, of temporary absence of pain, not because you deserved it, not because you did everything right, but simply because they happened. And when you stop demanding that life be different from what it is, when you stop fighting the inevitable, there is a kind of peace, not the peace of happiness, but the peace of acceptance, of understanding, of lucidity. Schopenhauer said something interesting near the end of his life. He said that those who truly understand the nature of suffering, those who see the will at work, who recognize the futility of everything, can experience a strange form of tranquility, not because they have found meaning, but because they have stopped searching. It's like that moment after a long battle, when you realize you can't win, and you stop fighting, and you just sit, breathe, observe, not with bitter resignation, but with a kind of quiet dignity. Because in the end, perhaps the only freedom we have is this: the freedom to see things as they are, without filters, without illusions, without false hopes, and to continue even so, not because it's worth it, but because it's what's happening. You didn't choose to be born. You didn't choose the structure of the world. You didn't choose to have desires, to feel pain, to grow old, to die. But you're here. And while you're here, you can choose one thing: to see the truth, or to continue hiding from it. Schopenhauer chose to see, and he paid the price. He lived a lonely life, pessimistic, without great joys, but also without great illusions. He knew what he was doing. He knew where he was. He knew there was no way out. And yet he continued. He wrote. He thought, he observed. Not because he believed it would make a difference, but because it was what there was to do. And maybe that's enough. Not as an answer, but as a way of existing. Conscious, lucid, without promises, without lies. Just here, now, seeing. You wake up, the alarm clock rings. You turn it off, get up, shower, have breakfast. You put on the same clothes, you grab your cell phone. You leave the house, you go to work, you come back, you eat, you sleep. Nothing has changed. Externally, everything remains the same. The world hasn't stopped, people haven't disappeared, your responsibilities haven't vanished. The routine continues, inexorable, indifferent to what you now know. But something has changed, internally, irreversibly. You see it. You see desire at work. You see the people around you chasing things that will not satisfy them. You see the rush, the anxiety, the desperate search for meaning. and you recognize you are in this too, not because you chose it, but because there is no choice. The difference is that now you know, and you can no longer unsee it. Schopenhauer did not promise that understanding would bring happiness. He never said that lucidity would be comfortable. On the contrary, he knew that seeing the truth is a burden, a weight that most people spend their entire lives trying to avoid. But once you've seen it, there's no turning back. The illusion no longer works. Comforting narratives sound hollow. Promises of progress, love, personal fulfillment, all of that loses its power because you know what's behind it. You know it's just another form of desire, another form of escape, another attempt to fill the void, and the void remains. And here's the paradox. There is something valuable in that, not in the conventional sense of valuable, not as something that makes you happier, more productive, more successful, but valuable in the sense of true. You are no longer living in fantasy. You are no longer being manipulated by empty promises. You are no longer waiting for something external to come and save you. You know it won't. And there is a strange dignity in that. It's like waking up from a dream. In the dream, everything seemed important, urgent, real. But when you wake up, you realize they were just images. None of it existed. And although there may be a moment of disorientation, there is also clarity. You know where you are. You know what is real. And that in itself is a form of freedom. Not freedom from prison, but freedom within prison. The freedom to no longer believe that bars are doors. Schopenhauer lived this lucidity, and it wasn't easy. He was known for being difficult, lonely, cynical. He didn't have many friends. He didn't build a family. He didn't seek recognition, although he received it late in life. He simply lived, observing, thinking, writing. And what he left behind was not a message of hope. It was a mirror that reflects reality without filters. And those who look into this mirror see something uncomfortable. They see suffering. They see futility. They see the cruel structure of existence. But they also see themselves, clearly, without disguises. And perhaps that is the only way of living that really matters. Not living well, not living happily, but living consciously. Knowing what it is, knowing where you are, knowing that there is no final answer, that there is no redemption, that there is no destination, only the journey. And the journey is this: desire, frustration, small moments of beauty, long periods of emptiness, aging, loss, death. But now you know. And knowing doesn't change the journey, but it changes how you go through it, not with naive hope, not with comforting illusions, but with lucidity, with acceptance, with a kind of quiet courage. Because continuing to live knowing that there is no meaning, that is courage. Not the heroic courage of movies, but the courage of everyday life, of waking up, to do what needs to be done, to interact with the world, knowing that everything is temporary, that everything will end, that none of it matters in the grand scheme of things, and yet to do it, not because it's worth it, but because it's what there is. Schopenhauer didn't save anyone. He didn't cure suffering. He didn't offer comfort, but he offered something perhaps more valuable, the truth. And the truth is that life is suffering, and then you die. This is not motivational. It is not inspiring, but it is real. And reality in the end is all we have. So what do you do with that? You can go back to your illusions. Try to forget what you saw. Dive back into work, relationships, distractions, and maybe it will work for a while, until lucidity returns. And it always returns, in moments of silence, in moments of solitude, in moments of loss. Or you can accept it. You can live with the truth. You can wake up knowing there is no purpose and do things anyway, not because they will fulfill you, but because they are what you have. You can work, not expecting the work to fulfill you, but because you need to survive, because there is something to be done, because while you are here, you can do something, even if it doesn't matter eternally. You can love, not expecting love to fill the void, but because human connection, even if temporary, even if imperfect, is better than absolute loneliness. Because while you are here, while there are others here, there can be exchange, there can be moments. Even if they are brief, you can create, not expecting your creation to be remembered, but because the act of creating in itself is one of the few things that suspends desire, that takes you out of yourself, that puts you in flow, where for a few moments, you are not chasing anything, just doing. And you can observe, simply observe, the world, people, yourself, without judging, without trying to change, without expecting it to be different, just seeing. It won't make you happy, but it will make you lucid. And lucidity, though heavy, has its own reward, the reward of no longer being deceived, of no longer living in denial, of finally being awake. Schopenhauer said, "Life and dreams are pages from the same book. To read them in order is to live. To leaf through them at random is to dream." You've spent your life leafing through them at random, creating narratives, pursuing fantasies, believing in promises. Now you are reading in order, page by page, line by line. And what the book says is clear. There is no happy ending. There is no redemption. There is no hidden meaning waiting to be discovered. There is only what there is, and then nothing. And that is liberating. Not in the sense you were taught, not as freedom to do whatever you want and be happy, but as freedom to stop hoping, to stop searching, to stop believing that something is missing. Nothing is missing, because there was never anything to be complete. You are here, now, and soon you won't be. And that's okay, not in the sense that you happily accept it, but in the sense that you understand. You see the structure, you see the mechanism, you see blind will operating through you, through everyone. And in that seeing, there is a strange peace. Not the peace of happiness, but the peace of no longer fighting the inevitable, of no longer demanding that the world be different than it is, of no longer blaming yourself for not being able to be happy in a system that was never designed for happiness. You stop fighting, and you begin to observe. And in observation, in lucidity, in radical acceptance of reality as it is, there is something. Not a solution, not an answer, but presence, consciousness, existence without illusion. And maybe that's enough, not because it's satisfying, but because it's true. Schopenhauer was right. Life is suffering, and then you die. But while you're here, while you're conscious, you can choose to see. You can choose not to hide. You can choose to live with your eyes open. And that, just that, is all that remains. If you've made it this far, you already know. There is no easy comfort. There are no quick fixes. There are no empty promises on this channel. What there is lucidity. And lucidity is all we can offer. So one final question. Now that you've seen, what will you do? Will you go back to the illusions? Or will you continue to explore reality as it is? Leave a comment. When was the moment you realized that life didn't have the meaning you were taught? When did you first see the emptiness behind everything? Watch the next videos on the channel. Count on me and follow the white rabbit.